Well, hello everybody and welcome back to an atypically windy Sunday here in WestMan. You'd think a wiser YouTuber would make his updates on a different day of the week, but frankly, I've been doing these updates on Sunday for so many years, it just kind of seems, well, wrong to do it any other day of the week. I mean, random videos, sure, but garden updates, that's just a Sunday thing around here, so yeah. We are going to try and push through this wind anyway, and as always, I am desperately hopeful that this mic and its little cover, little dead kitten thing here that hopefully is working just fine. Yeah, hopefully they do their thing and block the wind as we look around the gardens today, because I've actually gotten a few things done. And of course, the girls have to speak their piece because, you know, I always end up with these diva animals. Since we are at the chickens, we are at the Saskatoon, so let's start here. So this is the Smoky Saskatoon on a breezy day that we are attempting that air layering propagation with. I'm not going to crack that tinfoil open today, thinking if the weather holds, we'll do that next week. But I did want to share that this year we seem to have some really decent clusters of berries forming on this, which is super exciting because this is the one we brought with us all the way from BC, and last year it only put on a couple of berries. So we were kind of thinking maybe this year things would get better, and yeah, things are definitely starting to improve. So these long-term berry bush plantings that I absolutely love so much for so many reasons, you know, long-term is exactly the key thing there, right? Like, you've got to wait it out, but once they start producing, there goes the wind. They're killer producers, right? We'll go take a look at the ones up front that were already, well, probably half a decade or decades old by the time we got here. I'd have to check back on Google Earth images, but yeah, it seems to me they were at least 5 to 10 years before we got here. Anyway, we'll check back on the well-established Saskatoons here in a second. See, what's interesting is one of the bonuses to that variety of birds is they were supposed to be good, quiet yard birds. But anyway, here we are at the much more well-established Saskatoon Berries, and you can see yet again there's just fruit everywhere on here. So even though it's a fairly fierce competition between us and the birds, there will be enough for everyone to walk away with a win. And with a little luck, I'll be getting that Saskatoon berry mead made this year, so that is exciting. Want to get to transplanting a whole lot of those young seedlings out of there, cleaning it up, trying a few things there, and definitely want to try air layering on some of these much larger branches that kind of need to be pruned out anyway. So if I can save them and make a new bush out of them, I think I'll be much happier with that. Anyway, we were checking on things back over by the loudmouth chickens. On our way back though, we can stop and take a look at the red currant, which is also doing very well this year. No signs of those bugs yet, but if we look carefully, we can see lots of little balls forming on there that are going to be absolutely delicious little red currants. I'm almost thinking I might want to throw some sort of a netting over this just to protect them this year, because there are so many of them. Like, look at that. That's beautiful. But I know the competition is going to be pretty rough back here. And again, this is, you know, probably its most productive year yet. It's just kind of getting established. It's another one we brought from BC. It was only like $4 or $8 or whatever to buy it, but this year's production could actually kind of cover that cost, and there are many years still to go, so that is awesome. I want to show you how the gooseberry is doing as well, and then we'll get into some actual garden patches. So the gooseberry is another one that I've got an air layering project going on, but this year it is showing some significant signs of abundance. There's a little tiny green one in there. If we go up a little bit, see it kind of going in there. The thing with this one is it's kind of a tease early on in the year. It seems to show a lot more berries than I actually get to enjoy. And while there has been, oh, ladybug, some back and forth in comments about it. These particular gooseberries do go to an interesting shade of, well, kind of a light purple. There's a good look at some berries on the go for me there. But yeah, they get to a light purple before they're actually ripe, and then they are absolutely delicious. So I'm really excited to see the numbers that are on here now, because even if I only get like 5% of these, I'm getting a lot more than I did last year. Oh, look, a sunny moment. Yeah, it's an interesting day for weather out here, but anywho, let's carry on and look at some garden archaeology. They recently dug out that perennial onion patch. So stick with me here, because it still doesn't look that great, but at least now we can kind of see the little clumps of onions that are in here, and there were a lot more of them that survived than honestly I had been expecting to find. The grasses were quite intense going through here, and having removed those grasses, they are now being exposed to a lot more wind than they're used to and a lot more sun. So they are going to need probably a couple more weeks to toughen up, and over that time period I'm going to keep pulling out the various unintentionals in there, and I'm going to start layering down some mulch, because finally we are past that last frost of the year. But since this is a perennial patch, we decided to add something new to it when we were gifted these by some local friendly individuals, and these would be horseradish plantings, apparently. So that is fantastic. I have been advised that horseradish can, oh, be careful, it can totally take over an area, but you know what? I'm okay with that. If a food source that I enjoy wants to go buck wild in my gardens, that's the kind of plant I want to grow, because I need determined plants around here. And these onions seem like a great companion for them, because they are very determined. The last few years, as you can clearly see, I have just let this patch do its own thing. We've got some maples growing up there I've got to get rid of. There's some kind of berry bush over there, might be choke cherries, don't know for sure. Told that this is its last year. If it produces something I enjoy, then it can stay, but if it doesn't, it's out of here. Gonzo. Firewood. But yeah, we got to cut down all of these maples and stuff. But I have been moving some of these onions, like there's that clump there, for example, into other garden beds, because apparently they're good companion plants, and this is the year for companion planting. So let's go take a look at those. Last year's corn patch has become this year's tomato bed, and I have read in that Carrots Love Tomatoes book that apparently tomatoes are totally okay with being planted in the same place year after year. So that means that this could potentially, as long as there's no disease issues, become a long-term tomato garden. As such, they apparently grow well with onions. So that one clump that I dug up in the back got divided into these 3 clumps here, and otherwise I have 42 little tomato plants that survived the abuse in the dungeon and are planted out here. For the most part, we've got Cherokee purples along the back. They seem to be surviving well. Then there's some Better Boy hybrids, some grape tomatoes, some Juliets, and I believe these 2 in the very front row are the last of the Broad Ripple currant tomatoes from Rob Bob. So that's interesting. I did have a few left over when I planted this area out, and yes, I know there are some thistles in there. Those are not tomatoes. So they ended up in what was supposed to be the carrot bed. I've had some issues though, where I put in that chicken enhanced sawdust, and we'll talk about that in the future. But for the time being, there's one, well, I guess there are 2 Cherokee purples at this one end of the bed, a bunch of weeds in here, and then we've got, I think it's a grape tomato here, and over in this weird sort of garden bed that was supposed to be individuals of lots of things, was still gonna be individuals of lots of things, but is currently a bunch of grass sprouts and a single tomato. So right now that thing's got lots of room to express itself, live, be free, be happy. But I got to mow down that grass edge and start planting some other things in there. So speaking of planting other things, last year's pepper garden became this year's corn patch, and it's going to be kind of interesting. I actually took a stick and measured everything out, so my corn plantings are exactly 1 foot apart, which is a little farther than they're supposed to be. But it gets worse than that. There's going to be people in a panic over this. There's 1 row on this side and 1 row on this side, and then none in the middle. In the middle here, we've actually got it's kind of a mullet garden, really. It's business up front and party in the back. So we've got the spaghetti squash in this front mound. I've got a whole packet of beans overplanted in this middle mound, and in the back mound here with the leftover weeds, turns out I found a whole bunch of sugar pie pumpkins. So hence the party in the back, because those are awesome little pumpkins. Only just got this planted last week. I'm not expecting a whole lot, but ultimately the lesson I'm looking for here, the learning, whatever, the educational experience, is what happens with 2 widely spaced rows of corn planted at 1 kernel 1 foot apart. Because last year in what's now a tomato patch, I had them, you know, some of these things were 2 inches, 1 inch apart. They were way too close, and we saw a whole lot of really stunted growth. And some of the lectures I've been listening to suggest that given space to flex and express themselves, a corn plant on their own can produce in excess of 30 cobs from a single stalk. So obviously that's something I would like to find out more about, and that's kind of why I'm doing this spread out version of companion planting. And that is right in front of this straw bale sort of black thumb potato garden that shouldn't have worked, but if we look at it, we seem to see signs of a few different types of life. I've got, hopefully we can get to it here. Caught up in my own cords there. All right, hopefully I'm getting this on the camera because I got a lot of glare right now, but I've got a bean and a potato growing beside each other there. I've got a bean and a potato right there. Another potato coming up there. Pan over a little bit. We've got a couple of potatoes and a couple of beans there. A few more beans and a couple more potatoes and more potatoes and more potatoes, and that is so impressive to me. I mean, obviously, don't count your potatoes until they're harvested, right? But considering how recently this was thrown together and how incomplete it was in breaking down when I planted into it, that I've got any life at all really, really surprises me. And I've got this one kind of suspicion that maybe these here are not the wheat that is popping up everywhere else, but these may be one of my popcorn plantings. So that would be exceptionally cool. Because again, we've got an opportunity for, well, like an individual corn plant to really produce, and this doesn't have anything else in the row because I'm seeing nothing at all from that other popcorn planting location. We'll give it time, but I think that's what I've got to go on right now. So we'll see. More companion planting in a very interesting sort of garden setup, but I love to try new and different things and hope for the best. And right now it's looking pretty hopeful, so that's cool. We'll have to see how it all comes out in the fall though, right? And the last bit of companion planting that's going on around here at the moment is this Hugel swale garden thing, which started off covered with that chicken enhanced sawdust, and it kind of formed this crust, right? So what I did was I mixed it through with I'll say about a 1-inch layer of the chicken poop manure compost pile from in front of their coop, and another inch or so of fresh grass clippings, lawn clippings, you know, first years. Get out of my nose, fly. So rude. Yeah, so where was I? Mixed it through with the first bags of this year's lawn clippings, another inch or so. Twisted it in with what was left of the garden claw and planted into it. I'm not seeing anything yet, you know, like I've got cucumbers at the bottom of this trellis. I've got peas planted at the down point, like of pretty much every down point on both of these types of fencing. I'm not seeing any peas coming up yet on either of them. I mean, I can't be terribly surprised because this is not exactly a mature gardening situation. But no matter what comes of it, I've at least elevated the garden level here a little bit. There was a lot of settling over the winter, probably going to be more settling over the next few winters to come. So yeah, if nothing else, it will give me somewhere to mix out and let the chicken waste compost down over the years. But I was really kind of hoping to see something grow out of this. There are, rutabaga seeds sprinkled all over this, carrot seeds sprinkled all over this, and in the center I've got a fairly wide circular planting of corn, because I believe Brother Troll suggested it should be planted in like an 8 or 12 inch circle of corn. Correct me if I'm wrong. I suspect I am now that I say it, but yeah, anyway, fairly big circle there, seeing no signs of anything even remotely like what I'm looking for there. So that's just, well, it's just how it grows, really. Taking a look at some of the permaculture stuff again, though, we're back at the honeyberries where I finally made a sign. I guess I'll show you that in a minute, but it's not quite under the plant yet. It's just letting it dry in the sun. But these are the polar jewel honeyberries, and just as I had hoped from all of those flowers and that wonderful bee activity that associated it, this thing is loaded with these little tiny berries. You have to get right up under the plant to find them, and in fact the best way to harvest these berries is lying on the ground, kind of nibbling them as you go. You find the juiciest, plumpest ones that way, but this plant is loaded, and I just love berries for that, because you know, once you plant it, it's set it and forget it. You don't really have to worry about it. All I do to maintain the health of this plant is every year I've got this circle of lawn clippings around the base. It gets a little bit larger and a little bit larger and a little bit deeper, and that's pretty much it. That is there to encourage the worms. My hope is that the worms feed the bush, and so far this arrangement seems to be working for everybody. So yeah, that's the polar jewel honeyberry there. It's little sign right there. Trying to find more rocks similar to that so I can do labels for the others. But yeah, that'll end up down in the bottom there after I do a few more circles around the base of that with lawn clippings, because like I said, I want to expand it a little bit every year. So it's kind of close to the same size as the actual bush itself. And I'm thinking that will allow it moisture and nutrients that it needs to ripen all these berries up. Oh my goodness. I love it. And then finally we've got Gilligan to the skipper here. This is the Borealis Haskap, which requires a much larger stone for its label, but gives me much larger fruit. You can see on my thumb, quite a few forming there, quite a few forming there. And again, because all of these bushes got put into the soil pretty much at the same time, I believe actually the Haskap and the honeyberry may have been moved a couple of times because they started off over on the fence line and we had a neighbor issue. It's complicated. They got moved here, but they're all just really doing their best to provide us as best they can this year, and it's going to be some wonderful fruit just everywhere. And I think because they are early season bushes, like these are the first things that were flowering in the neighborhood to the best of my knowledge, pretty much even before the dandelions started up. So the bees were all just all over these things. And I think that was a good strategy. Did a little garden archaeology in the Chaos Garden a few days ago. Uncovered the strawberry plants, which, just as I had suspected, have in fact really spread out from that one survivor. Now I don't know if these are strawberries or pine berries, because it seems to be a pine berry that kind of survived, well, I thought it was dead, so I dumped it into this pile here, and like a year later it just kind of showed up. So these may all be runners from that, and I mean, if you look carefully, squatting down here, there's a runner here, runner here, another runner here. Good heavens, this thing is just popping them off. There's one there, one there. We've got runners coming off on the side. So I'm going to have to do something to control this, because I would like the strawberries to spread out that way, but I'd also like to build up the garden bed before I do so. So it's going to be fun. Definitely got to rescue, oops, there's my cord. Definitely got to rescue this poor thing, because it's technically in the lawn, and I thought I mowed it when I did kind of basic lawn mowing for tomato mulch the other day. But luckily it was dodging me. So got to save that one, but gotta love strawberries too, you know. They're a nice set it and forget it, plant it in a good spot, give it a little bit of attention, and you'll have berries for years to come. And they produce more plants as they go. Seem quite happy to do so. You gotta like that kind of garden. Oh yeah, I forgot. There's also a tomato I planted way back here. I warned it life's going to be a struggle in the chaos garden, and I mean, look around it though. Everything here is just left to grow, as the grasses, as the weeds, and it's all growing ridiculously well. There is definitely something to be said for allowing multiple species of things to grow together in close proximity in gardens and fields and forage spaces, but that is an entirely different research project. Does look pretty blowing in the wind though, doesn't it? All right, and that is where I'm going to wrap it up. I kind of feel like I've got a mosquito smear on my face, but I've got nothing but glare on the view screen here, so I won't know until I edit this. Basically, we'll find out together. Anywho, thank you for sticking around as I wander around the garden today and show you kind of what's growing in my companion gardens this year. And it looks like it's really tomato-focused gardening this year as compared to my usual pepper thing. But hey, you know, you win some, you lose some. I've had some success with the aphids, and this year I did not. So yes, stick around as I've got a couple more gardens to plant out over the coming weeks, and we'll watch things grow as the months go by. Much love, everybody. I hope you have great successes in your gardens this year, and I will be back next week.